This graph right here, especially this red X, shows the process and the point at which most guys fail when they're trying to overcome premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction. And the real bummer is that if these guys were to just go a little bit further down the path, they would experience the success that they want. So for you, if you're on a sexual growth journey, understanding what this graph is and how to navigate it is crucially important to helping you have the kind of sex that you want. So my name is Taylor, and I've been teaching sexual self-mastery workshops and courses for over 6 years full-time, and I've learned that learning the techniques, learning the right sexual techniques, a lot of times isn't quite enough for guys to get the results they want. You need to also understand the deeper psychological and physiological processes behind transformation and the things that can actually kind of distract us and hook us along the way, making us think we're not experiencing the transformation that we want. So this graph is a perfect example of that. What is the graph? It's created by a guy who's a famous marketer named Seth Godin. On the one hand, over here in the left-hand column, there's results, right? And on the bottom, you see effort. It's basically effort over time. And what this basically represents is anytime anyone starts any new process in life, it could be learning the guitar, it could be learning jujitsu, it could be learning to last longer during sex. There's this immediate initial bump of results as shown in the graph. It's an immediate bump and you're excited about it, you're putting in the effort, you're feeling motivated, you have this conviction to fix this or to learn this new thing. And then what happens? For 99% of people, you keep going for a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, and then you're not actually seeing so much of the results anymore. And the initial excitement wears off. And then a lot of people quit here in this point. This is what Seth calls the dip. And he says, almost everything worth doing in life is controlled by the dip. And I would agree. When I decided to do my first deep dive into studying these practices, esoteric sex, sexual mastery stuff, I had already tried a lot of different things on my own, read different books, tried different techniques, but this time I was going into a month-long process. I was going to finally fix my premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction and all this stuff. And it involved me giving up porn and giving up fantasy and self-pleasuring in a certain way over a bunch of weeks, over this month. So when I got there, when I started this whole process, I was at the beginning part of this chart. I was really excited. I was feeling motivated. I was like, oh, I already have the results because I'm here. I got a couple practices in and I feel like this sexual energy charge in my body. It was great. But what happened over the next couple of weeks? Well, I was doing more practices, and sure enough, if you follow the chart, my motivation started to drop, my results started to drop, and I wasn't experiencing what I wanted to. In fact, I couldn't even get an erection. I couldn't get an erection for multiple weeks after I started this process. And I started to, in this dip area, I started to feel disappointed. I started to feel discouraged. I started to question, like, am I broken? Have I watched so much porn in my life that I'm actually just fucked and I'm doomed to a life of miserable sex and I'm never going to have the kind of sex that I want? And thankfully, when I was in this dip, I had the guidance of the teacher that was around, and they said, Taylor, I understand that this is a frustrating period of time, but you just got to stick with it. You're doing the right practices. Just stick with it. Eventually your nervous system, eventually your sexual response system is going to reorient itself to this new kind of pleasure, and then it's going to be better than it ever was before. Because of their input and because of their support and mentorship, I was able to make it through that dip. And eventually my erection did start to improve again. And then once I started to come up the other side, it got way easier because I started to see these results. And Seth, in his book, he talks about this too, except he makes an analogy about the Boston Marathon. And he says, most people drop out of the Boston Marathon in the beginning and the middle section. But once you make it to close to the end, very few people drop out because you can sort of see the finish line off in the distance. You can start to experience the results. The same could be said for me. Once I started to feel my erection coming back and my sexual vitality and vigor and arousal coming back online, there was a new quality to it. It was deeper, it was more powerful, it was more profound. And I felt all this inspiration come online. And then it was just like, oh yeah, I got this. Boom, 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 boom. practice became so much easier, results became so much easier, and then the results started to go off the chart. So now you're hopefully wondering at least one of these next two questions. One of them is, well, great, that's great for you, Taylor, but how long does this take? How long can I expect? And number two is, how do you know if you're actually doing the right practices or not? Because you'll see some stories of people out there, some guys who've been doing Kegels every day for like 14 weeks and they're still not overcoming premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction. In fact, it has gotten worse. So we'll talk about that in a second, because there is a really important part of this chart that's related, that's not here in this visual that I'll put up on screen soon. But what I will say is that I did survey all the men who went through my 10-week orgasmic mastery course. And I asked them specifically, how long did it take you when you committed to regular practice for you to start experiencing consistent, sustainable results in your sexual performance? The average time frame was right at 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And there was some range there. The wider average was 4 to 8 weeks, I would say, but right in the middle was about 6 weeks. And this is in line with the Western peer-reviewed research that is out there too. There are some studies that show 12 weeks until sustainable results. Some show 10, some show 8. There's one I found that showed 6 also, that combined cognitive behavioral therapy with some other techniques. But it's all kind of in that 6-ish range. I'd say 6 is on the earlier side of things. So you might think, oh, well, 6 weeks, that's not a big deal. I could do that. But when's the last time you actually committed to doing something and actually did it for 6 weeks consistently? It's pretty challenging to keep that up, especially if in week 3 or 4, you don't feel as motivated because you're not seeing the kind of results you want. It can be kind of demoralizing, and I've seen this happen in my courses, so I speak to this now. I speak to this dip, but I wanted to share this to the wider world because it's such an important concept that a lot of guys get discouraged around week 3, week 4 of the course. And I say to them, like, hey, this is a normal part of the process. Just like keep at it. And sure enough, around week 5, week 6, week 7, it starts to be like, boom, all the results start to come. But it's a result of doing the right practices for an extended period of time consistently. And you will go through a dip. But this brings up the other really important question, and I don't want to gaslight you or anybody, because there are probably people, maybe even you watching this, who are thinking, well, I've tried Kegels for 12 weeks. I tried reverse Kegels also. I'm still struggling with premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction. So should I just keep going? The answer to that is probably not. Probably not. There is a time to intentionally quit, but then to rededicate yourself to a new version of the path, right? So in addition to this dip chart that Seth talks about, he also has another chart that he calls the cul-de-sac. And this is a process where somebody's doing something over and over and over again and expecting results, but it's never actually going to achieve results because it's not the most effective strategy. So you need to be able to recognize, are you on a cul-de-sac path or are you on a dip path? And that can be kind of tricky to do unless you get some outside guidance or unless you study a lot. So this is why I have my free ejaculation control guide, to give people some actual guidance on what works and what doesn't work, what to avoid, what to try, that sort of thing. And this is why in my course, I help people. I have actual conversations with them in the real-time live group calls and office hours where we can brainstorm and workshop stuff when things aren't working. Because quitting in the dip, horrible idea. Quitting for good, horrible idea. But quitting a specific strategy for the desired outcome so you can rededicate with a more intelligent strategy, that is a great choice. I also like this quote from Seth. He says, never quit something with great long-term potential just because you can't deal with the stress of the moment. Boom. So crucially important. And there is another model that he talks about in his book. He actually has a book called The Dip. So there's the dip curve, there's the cul-de-sac, and then there's also this thing called the cliff. Because you might be wondering, oh, what about somebody who uses Viagra? Or maybe somebody uses numbing cream for their penis or SSRIs to delay ejaculation. Those strategies technically do work with immediate results. But the problem is they give such profound results immediately that they for a lot of guys, like, put them into a space of dependency. Then you start to depend on this technique and you get immediate results, and it keeps going for a little bit, but eventually you reach this point where you're completely dependent on it. And maybe you have a scenario where you forgot your numbing wipes or you forgot the Viagra, and then it's just like, poof, you crash off the cliff. Similar kind of end result to the cul-de-sac, but a way more intense drop off. Really not pleasant at all. If you're doing the right practices and if you're trying to overcome premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction, there's going to be a period of time where in the beginning you're excited, you're motivated, you're experiencing some results, and then you're going to go through a process where the results kind of like drop down for a little bit, and you're going to wonder, what am I doing here? Is this actually working? You might question yourself or your sanity or the practices, but it takes time to rewire your brain and physiology and nervous system. And so you're still doing the rewiring process when you're in this lower part of the dip. Eventually you will start to experience results and come up the other side. So if you have any thoughts about this, any questions, let me know in a comment below. I put links to my free ejaculation control guide and a free embodiment practice and my orgasmic mastery course in the description so you can check it out. There's one other thing that's crucial for men who are wanting to experience results in this area of their life. You can check it out in this video. I'll see you there. Thank you.